I don't know about you guys, but when I first started learning animation, I thought it would be a pretty simple process. Basically, you come up with the idea that you want to animate, and then you just animate it. It wasn't until I started taking classes at Animation Mentor that I realized there were steps in the animation process. These steps not only help you with your workflow, but also, especially in studio environments, ensure that everybody who has a say in the shot is on the same page. So today I'll be talking you guys through the stages that all animated shots go through. Using this shot that I did for class right here, I'll be talking you guys through what I did for each stage of the process, and I'll also be giving you guys a few tips that I learned along the way. Before I get into it, if you want to see more videos like this, be sure to give us a like and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Also, be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The links are in the description below. Lastly, I do want to say that I am very much still a student, so if you have your own tips that you want to share with us, please drop it in a comment below. I'd love to learn from you guys. On with the video. So the first step in the animation process is obviously to come up with what you want to animate. In a studio environment, I believe you have to go through the director and make sure that your shot works with the film, but at Animation Mentor, we're lucky enough to basically animate whatever we want. Whatever situation you do find yourself in though, it's always great to make sure that your idea is entertaining or at least elicits some kind of reaction. A lot of my mentors say that the absolute worst thing to happen to your shot is if you show it to a room full of people and nobody reacts. So yeah, don't do that. So for my shot, I had the idea of having a chef wind up for a big slice and then slightly miscut a coconut, which sends it flying across the room and ricocheting everywhere. I wanted it to be a little more cartoony, and I wanted to push the timing and spacing of it. And I thought that something like that would be really entertaining to watch. So once you figure out your idea, it's time to get planning. So for planning, the goal in this stage is to have a really clear idea of what you animate before you even go into Maya or your software of choice. The clearer it is in your mind, the easier it will be for you to animate. A big part of this process is drawing thumbnails, which are basically rough sketches of the general beats of your animation. These drawings don't have to be professional quality, they're really just there for you to explore and play around with your shot. The key thing you want to focus on for these drawings is to get good, clear, readable poses so that your ideas translate really well on screen. Another crucial step in this process is finding and filming reference. You can either find reference online or you can shoot it yourself if you can. Having this reference on hand is super important because it'll show you what you need to do mechanically in your shot. Also, in the case of filming your own reference, it'll also help you get in the headspace of your character, which is super important. One other tool at your disposal is the sphere pass, also known as the energy pass or the primitive pass. This is super useful to get you to envision the general animation without having to worry about complex character rigs. It's also super helpful for really exaggerated and cartoony shots where live reference isn't the greatest resource. So for my shot, the core of my planning revolved around video reference that I shot, which you can see here, as well as a sphere pass that I made, which helped me get a sense of the really exaggerated cartoony timing. Again, the goal of this stage is to have a really clear idea of what you want to animate without even messing with the rig. Everyone's planning process is slightly different, so definitely explore and experiment to see what works best for you. So once the idea is super clear in your mind, the next phase is blocking. Blocking is essentially just animating the key poses in your shot so that someone watching can get a rough idea of your animation. The goal of this stage is for you to start getting feedback on your shot without having to commit to animating tiny little details. A key part of animating this goal is to add just the right number of poses to clearly convey your idea. If you have too few poses and your idea isn't super clear, then you'll likely get less than ideal feedback since others won't fully understand your shot. Alternatively, if you have too many poses, making changes will be much harder since you'll have so many keys to deal with. For this step, you'll most likely want to animate in step mode so that Maya doesn't automatically fill in the in-betweens for you, and you can focus on getting really clear poses. You'll also want to make sure that your body mechanics are solid in this stage. For that reason, I'd recommend that you focus on animating the torso and the legs, and then working your way out. At least that's my workflow. Lastly, it's super helpful if you can bring in your reference as an image plane in your animation software. For my shot, I basically followed the timing of my sphere pass and I used my reference to check my body mechanics. I started with the torso and legs, and one thing that really helped me out here is actually hiding the body parts that I wasn't animating. I really made sure that the torso and legs were really solid here so that the arms and the head would be much easier. So once your blocking is solid and it's gotten approved by whoever needs to approve it, then you're going to be moving on to the dreaded spline phase. This is when your animation goes from the perfect, idealized world of blocked animation and enters the cold, hard world of interpolated real-world animation. The goal of this stage is to make sure that your timing and spacing in your blocking pass survives the transition to 24 frames per second, or whatever your final frame rate will be. Unfortunately, hitting the spline button usually makes your animation turn into a pile of garbage, as you can see right here. But do not fear, this is a stage that all animators go through, and there are ways that you can ease the transition. You could do what's called a blocking pass, where you essentially add in more poses so that your software has a better understanding of the stuff that happens in between your key poses. You might want to do this if your animation looks nothing like you imagined when you go into spline. Splining is always a tough task, but one thing that'll help keep things manageable is to break it down into chunks. Instead of splining your entire 200 frame animation, spline the first 30 frames first, and then when those are in a good spot, spline the next 30 frames, and so on and so forth. For my spline pass, I basically followed this advice and also started addressing some of the arcs in the body. You can compare what my animation looked like when I first hit spline after blocking versus when I cleaned it up afterwards. Once you've made it out of spline, the only thing left is to polish. The goal for this stage is to address all the tiny things in your animation that will really take it to the next level. This includes knee pops, elbow pops, hair passes, fingers, and prop animations. There are definitely many tiny things you can focus on, and actually one of my mentors told me that a shot is never really finished, it's just eventually taken away from you, so food for thought. In this stage, arc trackers will 100% be your best friend. You'll want to make sure there are no weird jumps and stutters in the arcs of any of your character's body parts. So be really liberal with that arc tracker and smooth away. For my shot, I basically did just that. I attached arc trackers on every single part of the body, and I went through all the arcs and made sure they were all really clean. I also focused on the hair and finger pass for this section and fixed elbow and knee pops. Let's recap the steps of animation. They are: find an idea, plan your animation, go into blocking, hit spline, and polish the small details. I really hope you learned something from this video. If you have any questions or if you have any tips you want to share with us, definitely drop it in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.